A very good morning to all of you. Our respected Chairperson,
Good morning.
Dr. Deepan, a Chairperson of the Organizing Committee, National Workshop on Human Rights Education. Respected Inaugurator of the program, Professor B. Panda Sir, Professor of Economics and Honorary Director of ICSSR NERC. Honorable Keynote Speaker Sir, Professor A.K. Mohapatra, Dean, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Honorable Chief Guest, Sejur Kamakhya Prasad Tasa Sir, Member of Parliament. Honorable Guest of Honor, respected Professor R.K. Satpathy Sir, Retired Professor, Political Science Department, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, as well as former Director of ICSSR NERC. A special invited guest, Professor Lilakanto Borthakur Sir, Principal of Morigaon College, and Dr. Kamal Gogoi Sir, Principal of Moridul College, Dhemaji, and all the members of the organizing committee, as well as learned participants. I, on behalf of this organizing committee, welcome you all to this inaugural program of the National Workshop on Human Rights Education, Issues and Challenges in Northeast India, organized by Center for Ethnic Studies and Research in collaboration with Department of Political Science, Moridul College, Dhemaji, and Department of Political Science, Morigaon College, Morigaon, Assam. At the very outset, I'd like to request our Honorable Chairperson of the Organizing Committee, Dr. Deepan Sir, to deliver his welcome speech. Dr. Soikia Sir.
Thank you, Das. Good morning, everyone. Respected Inaugurator Professor Bhagirathi Panda Sir, Professor in Economics and Honorary Director ICSSR NERC Shillong, Keynote Speaker Professor Ashwini Kumar Mohapatra, Dean, School of International Studies, JNU New Delhi, Chief Guest Sejur Kamakhya Prasad Tasa Sir, Member of Parliament Rajya Sabha, Guest of Honor Professor R.K. Satpathy Sir, former Honorary Director ICSSR NERC Shillong, Special Guest Dr. Kamal Gogoi Sir, Principal Moridul College, and Dr. Lilakanto Borthakur Sir, Principal Morigaon College, learned participants, research scholars, and student friends present in this ICSSR NERC sponsored week-long workshop. First of all, I, on behalf of Center for Ethnic Studies and Research and Workshop Organizing Committee, would like to welcome you all to this ICSSR NERC sponsored week-long workshop on human rights education, issues and challenges in Northeast India, and extend our heartfelt gratitude and sincere thanks to one and all for your kind participation in this week-long workshop. Friends, CESR means Center for Ethnic Studies and Research is a non-government organization established in the year 2015. Since its inception, the CESR has been organized a lot of workshop cum training programs, published a half-yearly referred journal, state-level ethnic dance competition, flood relief programs, national and international level seminars, published a good number of books, awarded 4 number of awards to the dignitaries for their excellency in socio-cultural activities. Recently, we have organized an international level webinar on a very important burning topic, border disputes in Northeast India, with special reference to Assam-Mizoram border issue on 2nd August, where a huge number of participants were participated. We are also extremely happy to inform you that we have organized a week-long ICSSR NERC sponsored workshop last year also on good governance. In this auspicious occasion, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the ICSSR NERC for their continuous support and guidance to our organization. Friends, all of we know that the human rights education has been acquiring greater importance in the changing national and global scenario in the realm of globalization. While it is opening up new possibilities for realization of creative human potential, there are very disturbing trends in the form of violence, including terrorism, within and across the states. The Gulf is finding it increasingly difficult to cope with the complexity and magnitude of the problem. It has given rise to arbitrary exercise of power by organs of the state, resulting in legitimacy crisis in Northeast India. The society should have enough democratic potential where people, particularly the youths, would play a positive role in facing the new challenges. This would be possible only when the people in all walks of life are sensitized and humanized so that they will be part of the solution, not of the problem. Human rights education can create the necessary moral, intellectual, and democratic resources for this purpose. The ultimate overall vision of building a human, participatory, and democratic society has to be promoted and sustained in Northeast India. In considering the importance of the human rights education, the Center for Ethnic Studies and Research has organized this ICSSR NERC sponsored week-long workshop on human rights education, issues and challenges in Northeast India, in collaboration with Department of Political Science, Moridhal College, Dhemaji, and Department of Political Science, Morigaon College, with the objective of finding out a positive outcome from the academic discussion and deliberation on this issue, and for addressing the challenges for amicable and permanent solution. Our great expectation lies in your expertise and resourcefulness to play a decisive role in delving out the pros and cons of the issue and arrive at concrete results that would help in delving with the issue. Dealing with the issue. Friends, we are very grateful to you all for your gracious presence in this occasion and hope your active and scholarly participation in the workshop will make the workshop fruitful and successful one. At length, I, on behalf of the organizing committee and Center for Ethnic Studies and Research family, once again would like to confer warm welcome and extend heartfelt thanks and gratitude to one and all. With thanks, Dr. Deepan, Chairman, Seminar Organizing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepan, sir, for your welcoming speech. In your speech, you have highlighted the basic objectives, the basic activities of the Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, as well as the vitality of the topic on the basis on which we are organizing this workshop. Once again, thank you, Dr. Deepan, sir. Now, I would like to request our inaugurator, Professor B. Panda, sir, Professor of Economics and Honorary Director of ICSSR NERC Shillong, to deliver his inaugural speech. Before his inaugural speech, may I request our Honorable Advisor, Josna Hazarika Madam, to introduce our inaugurator.
Thank you very much, Deepan. Namaskar. A very good morning to all the respected dignitaries and participants present in this virtual platform. At the very outset, I, on behalf of the Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, welcome you all to this one-week interdisciplinary national workshop titled on the topic, Human Rights Education, Issues and Challenges in Northeast India. Esteemed participants, during this hour of pandemic, we are fortunate enough sharing such gathering from this platform in which various academic discussions are being discussed and highlighted by respected, renowned personalities. Well, now may I take the opportunity to introduce Professor Bhagirathi Panda, Professor in Economics and Honorary Director, ICSSR, NERC Shillong, as the inaugurator of the workshop. Professor Panda was the Dean of the School of Economics Management and Information Science and Head of the Department of Economics, NEHU, Shillong. During 2008-2009, Professor Panda was also the faculty of IIM Shillong. Professor Panda is an Asian Fellow of Asian Scholarship Foundation, Bangkok, and also he worked as a visiting fellow in Thammasat University, Thailand, and Asian Institute of Technology, Bangkok, during 2003. He has more than 30 years of teaching and research experience in different universities and colleges of the country and abroad. His publications are more than 50 research articles are already published in different national and international journals. Professor Panda was a member of expert committee formed by Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India on MG Nrega, and he is currently the editor of UGC Care listed journal Man and Development, published by ICSSR NERC Shillong. Well, this is a brief introduction about Professor Panda. So we are very much fortunate having you here among us, sir. Now, may I request you, sir, to inaugurate the workshop, and the platform is yours, sir. May I?
Thank you so much, Dr. Joshna and Dr. Deepan Das and Dr. Deepan Takia, both the Deepans, and the whole team of CSER. It's good morning to each one of you. I can see here the guest, I think Kamakhya Prasad, Honorable MP Kamakhya Prasad Asa. Good morning, sir, to have you here itself. I can see Professor Ashwini Kumar Mahapatra, who will be delivering the keynote address today. Thank you so much, Professor Mahapatra, for being here itself. I can see Professor Satpathy as my predecessor also in this organization. So my thanks to him also joining this workshop. And also my good morning to each one of you. I think the faculty members, the researchers, the scholars, ladies and gentlemen who are present in this workshop. It's a pleasure and privilege on my part to inaugurate this very important workshop on human rights education issues and challenges in the Northeast. I think I'm not an expert in human rights or human rights education. What I'm going to share with all of you are just my random thoughts. Maybe I may not be very systematic. Professor Satpathy, Professor Mahapatra are experts in this field. So I would like to hear them more rather than me, in fact, giving a very detailed lecture. But still, as the program says, and I have to inaugurate the program, let me just share some of my random thoughts, I think, with all of you. The history of the growth of human civilization is the history of the quest to ensure better human rights, I think, for human beings. So that's why I think the very concept, the idea of human rights, I think it dates back to thousands and thousands years. Now we are trying to develop theories and also, practices to perfect and to particularly to practice this very idea of human rights. When I see when I see human rights education in the country or even at the global level, and for that matter also in the Northeast, I have some of my own observations. Although the seminar is all about issues and challenges, I will put them together, and it's up to all of you, I think, to segregate them. I find it very difficult to segregate them at my level. So I would start with, I think the very concept of human rights is known to all of us. Essentially, it's a very wide, it's wide, very comprehensive concept. It encompasses all of, very, every aspect, a requirement of a very dignified life. In that context, it ensures, or it includes what we call, for example, all our civic and political rights. It also includes our social, economic, cultural rights too. Let me specify some of the things which I think we need to take into cognizance and work on when it comes to human rights education in Northeast, and for that matter in the whole country, and even at the global context also. The first thing which I see is to put the very understanding of human rights in proper historical perspective. As I see now, many of the writings in human rights and their understanding subsequently, they're a little skewed. When you talk about the evolution and the writings of human rights, ideas of human rights, it's mostly Western thinkers centric. We give all credit to Rousseau, Plato, everybody, the Western thinkers. But also we need to understand that we as a country, and there are, I think, great personalities in the past and even in the present, who are also shaping the very idea of human rights at the global context and in our own country. For example, we can't forget Gandhi, can't forget Aurobindo, we can't forget, Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda. See, they are also in their own, and even, Lord Buddha. They have given their own understanding and practice of human rights to our country and to the globe. And many times, actually, we do not find reflections of the contributions of these great souls in understanding of human rights. So I think the contents of human rights, particularly in your country, need to incorporate the contributions of these great souls. That's number one. Then number two, I think it's all about putting human rights in the human development framework so that it becomes much more practicable. Many times, human rights, their content includes a lot of things. And it becomes so comprehensive that in its realization aspect, it becomes a little difficult. So that's why in its operational aspect, you need to identify some of the important dimensions of human rights, and then you can synergize it with the very concept of human development. I think that's one thing which we need to have it in our course curriculum when we teach what I call human rights. Then third thing which comes to my mind is all about realizing this vertical integration in the teaching of both in the content and the pedagogy of human rights. Human rights is something, or the education concerning human rights is something we should start from the school. Then subsequently, I think its nature of teaching should also a little different in the colleges and then subsequently in the universities. So when we develop a syllabus concerning human rights, it needs to be organically linked up in, and realize this vertical integration and identify. We need to identify what is to be taught in the schools, what is to be taught in the colleges, and what is to be taught in the universities. So that vertical integration is one of the important requirements of human rights teaching in our schools, colleges, and universities. Then the other thing which I need to also talk about is all about I think contextualizing human rights understanding and subsequently its content and pedagogy in the context of the Northeast, regional specificity, for example, incorporating the regional specificities in the teaching of human rights. And here itself, we need to take a balanced view. Many times when we come across writings on human rights in the Northeast, they're mostly, I think, about violation of human rights by the military personnel, the police, etc., etc. That's, in fact, that should be there itself. I don't say that violation of human rights doesn't happen by these state elements. It happens by the state elements. But we also need to be equally conscious of the human rights violations which happen by the non-state actors. And that also we need to be aware of. And that also needs to be reflected in our content and pedagogy of human rights. The other thing which I would like to take, the fourth or fifth thing which I would like to impress upon here is all about making the education of human rights free from the bias of ideology. Here I'm not going to talk about any specific ideology, but then human rights education should be as scientific, as rational as possible, so that we have a better understanding, leading to a better practice when it comes to human rights. Then the next thing which I would like to reflect upon is all about understanding human rights violation in the context of uh, digital media, social media. And then right now we are running through this pandemic phase, and we are making use of, I think, digital media a lot. Now, these days, when you just go through different social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or any other Instagram, or any other social media for that matter, we find a lot of human rights violation also happens when it comes to children, when it comes to women, particularly those who are in a disadvantaged situation in our society. I think reflection of the extent, the nature of these kind of violations in human rights violations through social media also should be a part of the teaching of human rights in our course curriculum. We need to also come out with some kind of solutions to how to overcome these kind of human rights violations. So that's the other thing which I wanted to share with all of you. And then then the other thing which is on the practical side of human rights teaching is to teach human rights in regional languages, which is also in a sense the objective of our new education policy. I think we need to teach human rights and different components of it, contents, and even in terms of its pedagogy in regional language. Then the last point which I would like to share with all of you is in the context of globalization, internationalization. And that's two more things I will say. Yeah. One is understanding human rights in the context of increasing globalization, and particularly understanding the forces of globalization is to impact the practice of human rights. We're having now powerful global institutions coming in. For example, WTO, World Trade Organization, is emerging as a very powerful global institution. Similarly, transnational corporations, PNCs, MNCs are coming up in a great way. And I've seen in the past also, particularly in the economic space and in the digital space, how many of these institutions, international institutions, the corporates, they in fact try to compromise with the human rights requirements, the human rights aspects, particularly the economic aspect or the cultural aspect of the rights of human rights of individuals in society. We need to also, I think, be careful and need to understand, the requirements of negotiating with this kind of fast emerging international institutions and the forces, and then position human rights there. And the last one, which is not the least, when it comes to the education of human rights in the Northeast, happens to understand human rights, particularly with respect to its process part. When I just scan through the textbooks or for that matter, the reading materials in human rights for the Northeast or for that matter in the country, we see mostly the contents are rich in, I think, the situation analysis. The contents make I think, to a great extent, good understanding of the situation of human rights. But for better realization of the objective of human rights and ensuring better human rights to, I think, billions of human beings in our country, it's imperative that we understand the very process of human rights. There are, I think, good number of forces innumerable forces, political, social, economic, civic, cultural. I think they all come together, they act and react, I think, on each other. And then in the process actually they shape the process of human rights. So for ensuring better practice of human rights in the Northeast and for that matter also in the country, we need to very carefully understand the process aspect of human rights. That needs to be also, I think, as a pedagogy, needs to be brought in very seriously in the teachings of what we call human rights. Last one which just comes to my mind is all about the narrow, I think the reclaiming human rights concept from the very narrow understanding of human rights in the context of ethnic, what you call ethnic identity, or you can say, I would say rather ethnic fundamentalism. And that's much more prevalent in the Northeast. In the Northeast is a land of different, ethnic communities, so different ethnicities are there itself. And many times we try to construct human rights in a very narrow perspective, which is basically, I think, quote unquote, is it understood is I mean say it's taught even in the school level in the ethnic fundamentalism framework, and we need to reclaim human rights, its teaching from this kind of a narrow construction. We need to have a balanced, a comprehensive understanding of human rights, particularly inculcating the scientific temper in the minds of our young population and even our world also. So I think these are all some of my random thoughts which came to my mind in the morning itself, so that I can share with all of you. Ordinary experts like Professor Mahapatra, Professor Satpathy, they can better reflect upon very systematically on human rights teaching in Northeast and challenges. With these words, I once again thank the organizers, the CSR community for giving me this opportunity to share some of my own thinkings on human rights. I hereby inaugurate this webinar, this webinar on human rights education with great honor and acknowledgement. Thank you all. The workshop is now inaugurated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Deepan, sir, for your inaugural speech. In your speech, you have highlighted the different aspects of the concept of human rights as well as human rights education. You have enlightened us with your this warm presence and speech. I hope our participants have learned a lot from your presentation. Despite having your busy schedule, you have given us your valuable time. So once again, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Now, I would like to request our keynote speaker, sir, Professor A.K. Mohapatra, Dean, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, to deliver his keynote speech. And before his deliberation, may I request our honorable advisor, Professor Josna Hazarika, Madam, to introduce Mohapatra, sir. Josna Hazarika, Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Deepan. We are fortunate enough having Professor Ashwini K. Mohapatra sir among us today. So now, may I take the opportunity to introduce respected Mohapatra sir. Professor Mohapatra was appointed in June 2017 as member of the Council of ICSSR Delhi for a period of 3 years. He was nominated in March 2018 as a member of the Society of Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Kolkata, by the Ministry of Culture for a period of 5 years. Besides, he was also a member of the committee to examine relates to attracting and retaining talented and quality manpower and selection of meritorious to teaching profession, constituted by Ministry of Human Resource Development, July 2015. He was nominated as a member of the Performance Assessment Audit Team to review activities of Culture Center and Indian Studies abroad constituted in 2016 January by the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. He has served as a member of various experts committee of the UGC and a member of selection committee of the ICCR. He was also a member of the Institutional Advisory Board of the NCERT New Delhi, Executive Council member of Punjab Central University. He was also the visiting professor at the Chao University, Tokyo, Japan, 2009, visiting fellow to Maison des Sciences de l'Homme, Paris, France, 2008, and the European Union visitor to Brussels in September 2009. His other visits abroad include civilian peacekeeping training at the Austrian Peace Research Center. He also participated in conflict resolutions programs in Uppsala University, Sweden, and at the Peace Research Institute of Oslo, Norway, state guest of the Republic of Cyprus and Turkey. He is also a visiting professor to several universities like countries like Bangladesh, Egypt, Finland, Germany, Indonesia, Jordan, Lebanon, Singapore, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Spain, Tanzania, Thailand, UAE, UK, and Uzbekistan. We are so thankful for you, sir, that you are here present among us. He has got a number of volumes of his publications. Apart from a self-authored book on foreign policy of Turkey, continuity and changes, he has also published a number of research papers and articles in Referred Journal and in a leading newspaper of the country. Two of his co-edited volumes, Revisiting Hill Valley Connection in Northeast India and Decolonizing the Mind, Exploring Possibilities, are under publication. Well, we are really very much fortunate enough having such an eminent personality among us today as a keynote speaker, and I hope all our eminent respected participants as well as all the dignitaries will hear him as a keynote speaker. And sir, may I request you to be on the dais of this virtual platform, and the platform is yours. So may I?
Thank you, Dr. Jyotsna ji, for spending quite some time in introducing me. There's no need. You're known by what you do, okay, not by this biographical profile. To very outset, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizer of this one-week workshop on human rights in Northeast, challenges and issues, organized by the Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, CSR. It is, I think, led by our good friend from Assam, Dr. Deepan Das, Dr. Deepan Saikia, and Drs. Jogesh Liaji, coordinator. I'd like to mention one line about Dr. Deepan Das. I consider him as an academic entrepreneur. So here is a man who is always into something new in Assam, Guwahati, particularly Guwahati, capital of Assam, around that area. And he has been quite persistent, nagging to get me whenever he organizes any such academic program. And it's extremely difficult for me to say no. So normally what I do is I avoid him, but still he will be after me. So somehow he will manage to catch me and finally get my consent. So I'm extremely grateful to him for being nagging so far, getting me to any program is concerned. I hope he does the same to other eminent personality so that others also get an opportunity, a platform for a broader interaction with the budding intellectual from Northeast. Because I'm quite familiar with Northeast. The book just now you mentioned about the Hill Valley Connection, that book already has been published by Macmillan and ICSR as an extremely interesting and innovative book comprising chapters contributed to this book by the scholar from Northeast. All these chapters, expiring one or two, written by the young research scholar from Northeast, and where we have made an attempt to deconstruct the dominant intellectual, academic, scholarly discourse as regards Northeast. as as a kind of Northeast being disconnected from so-called rest of India. We have tried to highlight the century-old association or the organic link between northeastern part of India with the rest of India. Unfortunately, though, Northeast has not been studied, has not been appreciated for its amazing characteristic, amazing, the culture, it's what I call the practices it has by the people in India, rest of the country. We have made a humble attempt to highlight the contribution of Northeast towards the building of modern India. At the same time, the continuity, the cultural, civilizational continuity of Northeast with the rest of the country. So this workshop also, I'm quite confident, would go a long way in contributing towards, how to say, demolishing some of these myths created, perpetuated by adversary, not political adversary, let's put it as ideological adversary for last 70 years with their myth. And the whole human rights discourse as such happens to be one of such myth, that Indian state since 7 years has been described by its adversaries, its critic, as quote unquote majoritarian state. When they say majoritarian, in a democracy, majoritarian is the mode of governance, or it is the basic characteristic of any democracy. It happens to majority which rules. But here the majority, basically the critic referred to the majority belonging to particular religious community. How that particular religious community of late has been trying to enforce, impose, or say, in a typical hegemonic manner, ideas and practice in the rest of the country. But that's a basic point of criticism leveled by the critics, calling the contemporary Indian democracy as a majoritarian democracy. In practice, which is not. What makes them a little suspicious and cynical about it is because these scholars happen to be once upon a time the beneficiary of the establishment which ruled the country in the name of so-called secularism, socialism, which is nothing but simply populist slogan. So when you talk about the human rights as such, then you, as Professor Panda rightly highlighted, need to bring into your discussion the context. Because purely as a discipline of social science or international relation or political science, whatever you call it, human rights subdiscipline is interdisciplinary par excellence. It centers around the matrix comprising philosophy, which also implies the moral dimension of human rights, policy, and politics. 3P, philosophy, policy, and politics. These 3P constitute a matrix around which the human rights discourse has evolved. It has a constitutive part of the philosophy referring to moral dimension, basically refers each human being needs to have certain basic rights for his or her existence. Okay, so you will find the religious explanation, what I call theological explanation, philosophical explanation, idealistic explanation for each human being is entitled to have certain rights, that is its own survival, dignity, and its economic condition being fulfilled. These things are there. Identity, let's put it this way: identity, dignity, and existence, survival. So the survival also, in other words, called the security. That's physical security of it. So dignity, identity, and security. But then when it comes to implementation of this, which is considered to be moral, philosophical, in practice, you find the disagreement surfacing. And why the disagreement surfaced? When since 1948 is called the Universal Human Rights, that's a Declaration of Human Rights. But then here comes whether it is universal or not. With it, community belong to different other religious groups. They prefer to call it relational or relative, not universal, because it doesn't incorporate their ideas, their understanding, and their heritage as regards human rights. So you'll find resistance to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights coming from countries where you have different communities living there. I deliberately avoid mentioning that community name, but well understood. So the universality of this human rights also has been contested, has been challenged, and has not been accepted by many countries, which happens to be the member of United Nations. That's unfortunately so. Second, from international perspective, human rights acquired certain traction only in the second half of 20th century, following the World War II, especially the Holocaust. But then nothing much happened during the entire Cold War period. In 1990s, with the end of the Cold War, you find human rights issue became more pronounced. Again, in the backdrop of similar genocide perpetrated in Rwanda, in Bosnia, and subsequently Kosovo. Of course, you had in between northern part of Iraq in 1991 by Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein against the Kurds. So, but prior to that, it used to be part of foreign policy of then leading power United States, particularly under Jimmy Carter. But in the 1990s, human rights issue came to the forefront and occupied the center stage. Why? Because that time the lonely superpower was committed to the promotion of democracy. That is called the democratization mission. So democratization mission incorporated human rights, okay, and that in turn provided a justification for the external powers to intervene inside the countries where they find the blatant or the flagrant violation of human rights, as it happened in case of Iraq in March 2003, prior to that in Bosnia. And 1991, the external intervention in Iraq. So these are certain instances which are justified again in the name of protection and promotion of human rights. So the human rights discourse in a way provided the legitimate ground for the external intervention by compromising the state sovereignty, which are not there. So result, you find the human rights issues were politicized. Third, in the course of this democratization mission led by the Western countries, whether it is United States of America or the European Union, all you'll find in most of the non-Western countries, you had a certain absurd, why absurd? Let me put it this way, a proliferation of NGO. NGOs became a part, NGOs are called non-state actor, because I deliberately avoided calling it non-state actor. The moment I say non-state actor, what comes to your mind is the terrorist outfit active across the border. But here the non-state actor essentially includes the NGO, the civil society groups. The civil society groups were encouraged mostly by the European Union members in the name of promoting democracy from bottom. When America resorted to this idea of the policy of democratization from above, reflecting what is called the macho politic, the European Union opted for a different strategy, that is to create the sufficient constituency at the bottom, which would sustain any kind of democratic experiment on top. So it is called democratization from below, in contrast to enforced democratization by United States from above. So in the process, the human rights issue also came to the forefront because these NGOs in many of these countries where you have this decadal authoritarian regime try to promote the human rights values and ideas among the semi-educated people, among the local population, and in order to make them conscious of the democratic rights, that is freedom of expression, freedom of participation, and right to oppose, right to dissent, which are simply, what I call steamrolled by a powerful regime with its very powerful coercive apparatus. So in the 90s, you had a different situation. I come to the last phase. The last phase, that is last decade. What we have seen is there are sufficient indications or instances pointing towards democratic recession or democratic regression. Now, most of the country have preferred to keep quiet when it comes to democracy promotion. So if you contrast what prevails today with what was there in 2003, 2006, you find hell of a lot difference. Now you find the Americans are on the retreat. Wherever they had gone in the name of democracy promotion, democracy plantation or transplantation, and you see what they have done it. They've completely messed it up, be it Iraq or Afghanistan's closer home, or even look at what happened in Pakistan. You know, these are the countries which are neither liberal democratic nor fully authoritarian. You have, it's called unknown crisis. So they are neither democratic nor fully authoritarian. And these category of countries pose a serious threat to the security and global peace because they're neither of them. So it always involves the risk of instability, chronic instability, and the instability within that country is likely to be passed on to the neighboring country like India, for example. So that's a possibility here because there are the countries called democratizing. Other countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, you find the reversal, it's called the democratic retrenchment. This country became more authoritarian and no longer democratic. Hello.
Class.
Hello, Manojit.
Hi, sir.
If you have class, please exit. You are disturbing us. Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Please mute yourself. You're unmuted. I can
I'm
hear you.
not getting actually this. Yes.
Maybe somebody is trying to intrude.
Sorry.
Yeah, Zoom is quite risky that way. Yeah. So this what I find here is that we are today in an era where we have democratic recession, result of which human rights are not being talked about, are not being debated, discussed as much they used to be once upon a time in 1990s, even to an extent the first decade of 21st century. So you ask me why? The reason is the countries which are economically powerful, even a country which are close to economic powerhouse like China, or the Gulf countries, which happens to the wealthiest country in the world. These are the countries where you find large scale violation of human rights, basic human rights. But then they try to peddle their own thesis that economic prosperity, improvement in economic conditions, if it is ensured by the particular state of the regime, then the human rights are quite fulfilled because the human beings are no longer interested in just simply political rights, that is political equality, freedom of expression, right to vote, freedom of what I call a decent freedom of criticism. They are more interested in the economic upliftment, economic well-being, and that is being achieved by some of these countries which are ruled by the authoritarian regime. authoritarian regime either by a single party like China, that is Chinese Communist Party, or by a single man. That person could be a military ruler like Egypt. That person could be what I call a monarch, a small king, a prince like Saudi Arabia. So across the world, you have large-scale human rights violation in countries which are non-democratic, countries which are transitional democracy, countries which are non-democratic, authoritarian, either republican, single party, or monarchical. One. Second, countries which are transiting democracy, or what they call the transitional democracy, like Pakistan, even to an extent Bangladesh, because here you'll find suppression of opposition is essential for the perpetuation of a cabal to rule. So you'll find a similar thing in country like Turkey, which is again a transitional democracy. You'll find similar thing happening in Indonesia, in Malaysia. So these are the countries, or many countries in South Africa, except South Africa to a great extent. You have large-scale violation of human rights, and this is happening at a time you do not have an international agency or committee of nations committed to preserve and protect the human rights, even to intervene if there is a large-scale violation of human rights. What is going on in Afghanistan today? See? So you have the lack of commitment, lack of mobilizing wherewithals to protect human rights, to prevent the large-scale violation of human rights. Is it happening in Afghanistan today following the American exit? Or what is happening in country like Pakistan? The day before, you see how the majority community attacked the Hindu temple. It's quite barbaric in 21st century. Not only you just destroy the world, destroy everything out there, even the idols. That shows the utmost the disrespect towards other religious practices and faith. That is something unacceptable. You understand? So what I'm going to tell you is that human rights issues are important for us to discuss, deliberate, and debate at a time you do not have the international willingness to act. You had it in 1991, you had it in 1999, but no longer from 2019 onwards. Okay, because that involves the risk of a larger confrontation. And none of these countries are prepared to get into this political quagmire because we do not have the way out. And these countries are today reluctant to intervene the way we used to do it before. So that's the context you have to keep in mind when you discuss human rights issue in the context of India. Second is, when it comes to India, remember ours is a vibrant democracy. So in a vibrant democracy, the kind of human rights violations that take place in the non-democratic countries are not here in India. Yes, initial 40 50 years, you had this kind of violations. All that happened in the name of a particular caste or class or whatever. But this today, with the expansion of the media, particularly electronic media, is called the new media, social media. These cases, or the number of such cases, rate of such incidents, occurrence, have come down considerably. If it's also, we keep saying, how the women being targeted, certain groups in society are being, tortured by the so-called upper caste and different ethnic group. These do happen in such a huge country with such a huge population. But look at the number. I can bet with anybody has come down. It is why it is visible today, but they are being reported. They are being today reported in the press. If the police refuse to accept that complaint, the next day it comes in newspaper. So there is no way you can avoid it. Okay. So that is the reason, because that's the reporting part was not happening before. Whatever is happening in Northeast until very recently, very few people in the rest of the country used to know what's happening in Northeast. They even were not very familiar with some of the state capitals, honestly speaking. But now they cannot avoid it. Things have changed. So what I'm saying here is, trying to underline that the nature, the context, the nature, or the mode of the entire discussion or discourse related to human rights has undergone fundamental change. That calls for a new look, a review, revisiting. One. Second is contextualizing human rights discourse given the peculiarities associated with our country, one, and with the Northeast in particular. Third, when you talk about the education, Professor Panda rightly pointed out that the philosophy of human rights, you don't find mention of either Swami Vivekananda or say Aurobindo, because of the poor understanding or lack of understanding on part of the Western scholars about our philosophy. That's a huge problem. So this gap has to be addressed by us, not by them. If they ignored the Indian philosopher, particularly our philosophical tradition, our historical heritage, it's because we failed to project to the world what we are. Second is whatever little thing that we projected to the world, that is all negative, or that was all put in negative light. For example, caste system, suppression of women, suppression of entrepreneurship, all kinds of things, because we are considered a part and parcel so-called Oriental world. So we fit into this scheme of Orientalism. So time has come for us to project what we are. There have been distortion, there have been misrepresentation, misinterpretation of the basic philosophical ideas and values, which are more enduring than anything else in the world. We need to actually relook and represent such a way that people from other parts understand what it is. So what is important for us also, mode of communication, the language. Yes, we have to emphasize the regional languages to understand the complex issues, but at the same time learn other languages to present us. Otherwise, they will not understand if I go speak to them in Oriya or Assamese. So, and fortunately, we're endowed with that kind of a caliber that we all of us are born multilingual. Unlike the people in France, Germany, and Britain, they know only one language. We know more than one language. Tell me anybody in this country who knows only one language. I think minimum 3 languages, sometimes the dialect, that's a tribal dialect. We are all born multilingual. So the issue of language is a non-issue for us. That's my submission to the government in India. Language is not the issue, regardless of which language you learn, is absolutely meaningless as long as the meaning is conveyed, meaning is understood, and you make sincere effort to develop concept, framework, and the basis of pedagogy. That shouldn't be any problem at all, because you are born multilingual. So issue of a language is for me non-issue. So that's one aspect of it, that how you represent us, how you present our country, our philosophical tradition, their contribution to the evolution of human rights is equally important. In other words, what I'm trying to highlight here is, we have failed us, they have not failed us. We have failed in portraying what we are. Whatever we did, we portray our negative aspect of the world. The result is the world has looked at us from a different perspective. The Western lens is what we have disseminated, what they have learned from us through our things. Of course, they have been quite selective, but we have made no serious attempt to challenge, to negate their kind of narrative. And finally, when it comes to the education part of it, my submission to all of you here is, particularly the scholar from Northeast, is first, the context has to be borne in mind. Second is, as I say, the nature of human rights debate has changed. Rather than putting pressure on the state or finding out what state can offer you, provide you, the very nature of state has undergone change. It's no longer a typical welfare state. State is there to create the infrastructure. State is there to provide you the physical security. So state is there to provide you connectivity. State is not there to provide you jobs, to dole out assistance. Yes, state is role to play at the time of contingencies like disaster, flood, earthquake. Yes, state does have a policy of disaster management, but looking to a state as my bab, father, mother, that phase is gone. Instead, the human rights group need to put pressure on the government to create the sufficient infrastructure and connectivity, which in turn would create condition for capital generation, and capital generation will lead to the surplus accumulation. Surplus accumulation will ultimately result in capitalism. That's what the human rights group need to really focus on. Rather than pressurizing state to give me this and give me that, concentrate your efforts on infrastructure development. I'm quite happy to note the kind of development Northeast has seen last 6 years. It's historic, it's unprecedented, regardless what the objective may be. And the purpose, the objective of this is, this kind of developmental project is to create condition for connectivity and what you call interconnectedness among different ethnic groups. The time has come for us not to work in silos. We have to work together. That has to be more exchange of ideas and exchange of people. When the exchange of people takes place across the river in Assam, that leads to demolition of the ethnic boundaries. The ethnic boundaries are psychological boundaries. The psychological boundaries are a product of the typical colonial policy of attributing meaning to the territorial boundaries. You visit any northeastern state, whether it's Manipur or Assam or Nagaland, why do you have this kind of ethnic conflict? Lastly, because of the ethnic boundaries coterminous with the geographic or the physical boundaries. Who has done it? Not you and me. This is all the handiwork of the colonial masters and the so-called British anthropologists who had very little understanding of Northeast. So the idea is, the more you have the creation of market, local market, expansion market, that itself would create the dynamics to demolish this kind of psychological walling off, psychological distancing. So that's in itself would help you resolving much of this problem that you talk about today, the so-called ethnic autonomy, ethnic rights. These are there. Nobody's going to encroach on this, but the more the interaction, the greater the understanding and greater the trust. If you begin with this kind of trust deficit, then you tend to become cynical. So in this context, I find the role of the non-state actor, the NGOs, extremely crucial. In the name of promotion and protection, preservation of human rights, my appeal to the NGOs is not to ignite, not to provoke, not to play politics based on the pre-existing social cleavages. The NGO job is to, if not politicize the apolitical cleavages, at least not to surfen them, not to create that kind of feeling each community, the smaller community, autonomous, it can exist independently. No, that era is over. Things have changed drastically. Come out of the ghetto mentality is more important. The ghettoization will not take you anywhere anymore. We are Bharatiya, we are proud of being Indian, regardless of my community, caste, and ethnicity. We have to live together, prosper together. That should be the motto. That's the objective of all the NGOs. That's my personal, sincere appeal to all of them. Do not try to play on the existing cleavages, division, whether ethnic or territorial or community. No, we have to be very careful while picking up these issues, because each ethnic group obviously fights for the autonomy, its own what I call existence, its cultural uniqueness. Understandable, that has to be respected, but that should not discourage you, debar you from interacting with the others and learning from them. That in a way resolves much of the problem the North is facing today in terms of outsider insider. We're all insider, nobody's outsider, my dear. The outsider concept was inserted in my mind, your mind, by the British colonial master, not by the local leaders. You made as much sacrifice for the independence of India as others in the mainland of India. There's not much of difference. And in the new NCERT books, you'll find a reflection of, for the first time, contribution of great heroes of Assam and Manipur in the history book of NCERT, that's official history book of modern India, which have been markedly absent for last 70 years. For the first time, we're trying to insert your contribution to India's independence. So what I'm trying to tell is insider-outsider issue is nothing but a construct. This mental construct needs to be demolished. It's another myth. So in the name of human rights, you have to be careful. We have to be extremely careful when you try to stand up for the human rights of the illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants pose a threat, not simply the demographic composition of these northeastern states, even to Indian democracy. Not simply physical security, Indian democracy. So NGOs, any advocacy group stand for, because unfortunately India happens to be the signatory to the protocol, which promises certain rights to the illegal immigrants. But said that should not be made as a ground to fight for the rights of the illegal immigrants, because they constitute a serious threat to demography and physical security of Northeast as well as the rest of the country. You have to be very careful about it. We have, India, because it being a democracy, so-called secular democracy, has been signatory to a number of international protocols, including protection of the rights of the indigenous population. So we have to be very careful when you implement certain policy, keeping in mind our commitment to the international protocol being a signatory. So this is what normally some of these NGOs groups try to take advantage of. And sometimes they go knock at the door of they knock at the doors of the Supreme Court, High Court, or sometimes they take it to international fora, saying this is what the government of India is doing. So extremely complex and complicated issues. What you have to, much depends the way you educate the young children or young scholars about what? About human rights. Here I'll end. Rights are not absolute. Rights are contextual, and on top of it, rights are accompanied with duties. All through, we have been teaching generation of generations since independence. These many rights have been given or guaranteed by the Indian Constitution. We have never tried to educate them, their responsibility, their duty to the state, to the society. So equally important for you, while you develop the pedagogy, so far human rights is concerned, to teach this generation about the responsibility to the state, to the society. That's equally important. It is not one-way traffic. It is only both way. You have to also do as much as the state does for you. It is not you become simply a kind of a predator. You have to give back to the society. That shows your commitment to the state, to Mother India, Bharatavarsha. Only you take away rights the way the Americans do it. It's an artificial state. India is a natural state. It has lived for centuries. It will live for centuries as well. So here comes your role as an Indian citizen, not only in enjoying rights, also trying hard to return something, because you are guaranteed certain things by the Indian state. Thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you, Professor K. Mohapatra sir, for your valuable speech. In your presentation, you have highlighted different aspects of human rights, its philosophical foundation, a legal framework, politicization of human rights, as well as how it becomes a part of the foreign policy of a particular country. And also you have explained some suggestive measures for proper realization of human rights, both from international as well as national perspective. So once again, thank you, sir, for your presence. Despite having your busy schedule, you have given us your valuable time. We expect your cooperation in coming days also. And I would like to request you once again, thank you very much, sir, for your line for me. This one line is like blessings for me. And I hope your cooperation in coming this also. Once again, thank you, sir. Now, I would like to request our chief guest, Sri Kamakhya Prasad Tasa, sir, Honorable Member of Parliament. I'd like to request him to give his speech. Before his presentation, I would like to request our Assistant Coordinator, Dr. Gargi Pukon, to introduce our chief guest, sir.
Thank you so much, and good morning to you all, and welcome to the inaugural session of the workshop. It is my immense pleasure to introduce our Honorable Member of Parliament Rajya Sabha, Sri Kamakhya Prasad Tasa, sir. Although he requires no new introduction, as he is already familiar to you all, but I would like to take this privilege to introduce Sri Kamakhya Prasad Tasa, sir, to all of you present here. He was Member of Parliament to the 16th Lok Sabha from Jorhat Lok Sabha constituency. He won the 2014 Indian general election being a Bharatiya Janata Party candidate. He even served as the State Vice President of the Bharatiya Janata Party in Assam from 2013 to 2017. He has held as a member of various committees during his tenure at Lok Sabha from 2014 to 2019. He was a member of the Standing Committee of Petroleum and Natural Gas from September 2014 to August 2017. He had been serving as a member of Consultative Committee, member of Development of Northeastern Region, and Committee on the Private Members' Bills and Resolutions since 15 September 2014 till the dissolution of 16th Lok Sabha term. He was also a member of Standing Committee on Rural Development formed on 1st September 2017. He also became a member of National Youth Board. He was elected unopposed in June 2019 to Rajya Sabha from Assam. We are very honored to have you, sir, in our inaugural session. Now I would like to request our Honorable MP Sri Kamakhya Prasad Tasa, sir, to deliver his speech. Sir, may I?
Sir, please switch on your speaker. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Thank you, all of you, Center for Ethnic Studies, Mr. Deepan Soikia, Deepan Das, Dr. Rupesh Das, Orpita Das Gargi, and Josna Hazarika Madam. Also, Kamal Gogoi and Ilakanto Bordole of Moridol College and Morigaon College. And I thanks to Deepan Das because you have disturbed a lot to what you call to attend this seminar on human rights education issues and challenges of Northeast India. I thanks Deepan Das, our brother, and also all the organizers who are here. And the I thanks Osni Kumar Mahapatra and Bhagirath Panda. They have delivered such a intellectual lecture in this seminar, and both you are all educated person. I have seen this education of human rights. It should be very popularized in a special context to Northeast India. I have heard both the intellectual persons who have already delivered, Mr. Mahapatra and Panda, and I'll if I got time, I'll hear Mr. R.K. Satpathy also. All you are an educated person. One thing is that you have elaborated a history of this human rights education and human rights also. You see, human right is nothing else. It's a birthright. वही जन्म लिया तो उसका human right बनता है. Human right is not like that someone will have to give. But I have seen, if I am not wrong, I am from politics, and it is always blamed that the political system and the educated, our people says that education, what you call intellectual peoples always try to disturb the human rights of the people. But we are in system. We have got some limitation also. There is constitution, there is laws, there is many rules which we have to go abide by. But you see, this who is violating these human rights? Why we need this human right education? Because someone is violating these human rights. So we have to know about the human rights system. We have to know about the human rights system because some section of people, or their government, or some institution, or some persons are violating. So we need to be educated. We have to gather knowledge for human rights education. I think that during this session of 7 days session, which is patronized by ICSSR and NERC, on 7 days seminar will give a good what you call deliberation regarding this human rights. Every time we heard, yes, that here human right is violated, there human right is violated, government is doing like that, police is doing like that, from in family also, sometimes in family, inter-family matters, human rights is violated. Many things where we have seen human rights is violated. So education is very important. We need no UN. UN is formulating some laws, and Dr. India also in its preamble and directive principles, there are lots of things that is included for non-violation of human rights. Lots of seminars have taken place in what you call international level and national level. Many international organizations are coming out because some section of people who are violating the human rights and who are not interested to give this human rights to the people, and it is nothing else but it is a psychological and physical domination over the people. As I am from a political party, I am not saying that I am not in favor of violating this human rights, mind it. No one should violate the human rights system, human rights of the people. So education is very important, essential. Usually we have to nowadays, we have to give this right to education to the children. Is it important? Because this right to education, it should not be in act because it is a natural right. It's a natural right of the people. Everyone should be educated. Students should be educated. Every child should be educated. Why you need? Because someone is disturbing this system to get what you call from education. We keep our small children as a servant in our house. We always call one lady or someone who will work for us, and we disturb the human rights of that particular lady, or that what you call in slang word, it is a servant. Is servant is important? Is not? It's a violence. We are giving money and we are taking work from that person, but we should not violate. I have seen many everywhere. Just some days before, we have seen one principal of college of Sibsagar district, Sibsagar, I think, Moran College, the principal have beaten up and put hot water in the head of the boy, which is called Nokor, Chakor, anything, what you call. It is not good. Human rights, everyone have got human rights, in the proper human rights. So education is very important. Education is very important, though it is in the preamble, it is in the directive principles, or everywhere we got that security of human rights. But again, I repeat that someone is violated in future. What you call? It will be violated in future also because the mentality of the person, of human being, is not good. So, from this school age, we have to give education about this human rights system. UNO have rightly stated, and many seminars, international seminars, which are taking place regarding human rights. It is rightly pointed out that the violation of human rights, and that should be educated from very childhood. I request all the faculty, all the participants who are taking places, all the intellectuals who are taking place, to give a good deliberation regarding human rights. And I request you all that there should be an outcome of this seminar. If we are discuss and let it go, it will not be fruitful. Right from police, right from the government servant and the political persons also be aware of this human rights. They should not violate the human rights of a person. Well, I have seen many times police are violating these human rights. When they put dresses on their, what you call, they take the dress and seen what you call Assam police, Delhi police, or what, they think that they are the kings of the society. It should not be like that. Many times we have seen the people are harassed. So human rights, as we are saying, the right to education, equalization among these people, no gender discrimination should be there, common cultural heritage should be there, secularism should be there. It is somewhere, sometimes it is violated. And in Northeast, in context of Northeast, you see, Northeast is run by, maximum time is run by the natural law. Natural, what natural laws is? Natural laws, I don't think, I'm not an expert. Natural law means let live and everyone should be live in a very peaceful manner. No one should disturb no one. When you see a snake, it did not bite when we are not disturbed, because he will searching for his what you call food. So I'm thanks that you have called me as a chief guest, Deepan. I thank you. But what is it? Politicians, we are blamed many times to violation of human rights. Maximum time that it is blamed by the people that politicians are violating what you call human rights. The system is violating human rights. But in sometimes I have seen, sometimes it is very essential. Everywhere this human rights is, it should be protected. In Northeast, we have seen many operations have gone, many operations taken place. We have violated the human rights here to what you call, to suppress or to control this extremism or what you call terrorism. We are disturbed by this system. But people should think that if we live in a peaceful manner, there is no space of terrorism and extremism. And the leaders and the government should hear the voices of the people, so we can deliver a good governance. Good governance, when good governance will take place, no violation of human rights will be there. Students will take education, and everywhere the rights of the people is protected. But people, we have to educate the people how we have to live, because many people takes the advantage of freedom of speech, freedom of work, freedom of everything, and they are in the lieu of that, they are what you call, they do wrong things, which is go against the, not only, we don't think that not only government violates the human rights, not only system is against the violence, the people who are as a right from this Gaambudhas, right from a person, what you call, this rich persons, they always violate, maximum time they violate the human rights. So as a chief guest, not as a chief guest, as a citizen of India, I request you all to go and teach the students. Maximum you are participating in this seminar are related to education system. Many are students, many are what you call lecturers, and I thanks Maridhal College and what you call Morigaon College that they have organized such a good webinar. In Northeast India, we always think that we are disturbed by the system. Always. That is the fault of people like us who are representing the society. We have to represent the society in a right way, and we have to give the justice to the people, we have to deliver the what you call the government's policy, and we have to do more and more course for the people. But other than this political and social system, we have got lots of works to protect the human rights and to educate the people regarding this human rights system. There always we believe in honorable court, that court will give justice. Or when we move to court, there is human rights commission, there is human rights what you call organization. They will protect the human rights of the people. But I believe that if everyone we were trying to protect the human rights, and we are very much what you call interested to have a peaceful society. It is possible or not, I don't know, because every time we hears that in Assam also, in every part of the world, it is the human rights system, the human rights is disturbed. So if people are educated from their childhood, they will not disturb the system. They will go on their own way, and if we move in our own way, no accident will take place. So I, as a participant of this seminar, I request you all to educate the people. And you see Mr. Deepan Das and Deepan Soikia, Jogesh Das, Arpita Das, all this, Gargi Phukon, Josna Baido, all I request you all that don't think that human rights is violated in only issues are there in only in Northeast. In whole world, the human system, human right is suffering from various section of people. This section of people who are ill-minded, I think, they always disturb the system. But the people should also cooperate with the government, and people should also abide by the rules of human rights. So they will also live peacefully, and society will be a peaceful society. So thanks to all. I think on 7-day seminar organized by organization studies of ethnic center for ethnic studies. In future also you will do good organize good seminars, and I request all the participants to use what you call a language, simplified. That should be very simplified. It should not be very hard. This meaning of what you call human education, human right education, that should be in very simplified language, so everyone can understand. Don't use hard words. Don't use this hard English. I request, because many of us is not aware of English words, and I am not a fluent English speaker. Due to this webinar, I am speaking English. Our Uparashtrapati and chairman of Rajya Sabha always speaks about this use of local language. So it is not possible because there is no translator. And try to give I have a request on 7-day seminar. You will be using very simple language so everyone will know, and the terms should be defined. It is a long. I request all the participants to participate in this seminar, and I request the organizer also to teach something to the public representative, not MP or MLA, but right from Panchayat to Sansad. And I request you all to give teachings to this police officer also. They are teach, but there are also class. Nowadays, human rights is very important subject in police forces and armed forces also. But they will learn on their own way. They are on their own way. But CSR, Studies for Northeast Study, Center for Northeast Study, I think you also influence these officers to participate in this type of seminar, so they can in future they can protect the human rights. Thank you. I am happy that you have called me in this seminar, and I thanks to Mr. Ashwini Kumar Mahapatra, R.K. Satpathy, and Bhagirat Pandaji. They are all are very learned person. I try to hear you all if it is possible, but I have some works. I have to go later on. I request Deepan Das to send me the recordings. I'll go through these recordings, and accordingly we'll will deliver it to Dr. India also, and we can write. Don't mix it. Don't. I request. Human right is not violated in only Northeast. It is violated everywhere. But in Northeast, our sensitive people, you see in Assam, Mizoram area, that is violated by the government. No? There are knowledgeable people who are representing police force. They have fired and they have killed 6%. Is it not good? It should not be like that. They have to also they have to also participate. Now it is matter of participation. They have to participate in the human rights education and human rights protection of human rights system. So thank you all. Thank you the participants. Thank you organizers. I like to thank all these participants and Deepan Das and other Mr. Deepan Soikia, Mr. Jogesh Das, Mr. Orpita Das, Gargi Baido and Josna Baido. Also, Kamal Gugoi and Ilakant Gugoi, I request you all to organize this type of seminars, and the participants should be not only in human rights. You try to make the participants, this not only students, academics, but the officers who are interested, the government servants, they are always violates the human rights. You see, when a file is not signed by anyone, the officers keep it for months and months. They are taking bribes, they are taking money, and it is blamed. Government is blamed. But you see, I have seen in your education system, in DPI, higher education system, file is pension is not delivered. Pension system, it is a violation of human rights. When a person retires, he have to get the pension. I'm receiving some what you call the complaints from the retired teachers. They are disturbed. They are harassed by the officers. They are harassed by the what you call LDS, UDS, and officers, and not giving this clearing this. So they have to participate. They are all also concerned about the rights of the persons. They have got rights. So please make this arrangement if you can. No, this corrupted person and who are mentally always tries to disturb the system, they will not participate in this type of seminar. But try to send the link or send the recordings to these persons who are disturbing this system. Thank you all. Thank you, Deepan Das and all. I'd like to request you. I'll participate if I can spare times in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamakhya Prasad Tasa sir, for your warm presence and presentation. In your speech, you have highlighted some basic areas, some basic general ideas, some general aspects where human rights are violated, both in nation at large as well as in North in particular. So once again, thank you very much, sir. Now, I would like to request our guest of honor, respected Professor R.K. Satpathy sir, to deliver his speech. Before his presentation, I'd like to request our coordinator, Dr. Jogesh Das, to introduce our guest of honor, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Deepan Das, sir. I would like to introduce Professor Satpathy sir. Professor R.K. Satpathy, he was a professor in political science, Nehru, Shillong. He was also former honorary director, ICSSR, NERC, Shillong. His area of interest is international relations, especially in global politics. Professor R.K. Satpathy has been participated in number of national and international workshops, seminars as resource person. His major publications in United States and Central America, globalization and traditional institution in Northeast India. Now I would like to request Professor Satpathy sir to deliver his speech as guest of honor. Professor Satpathy sir, please give your speech.
Thank you very much. I thank the organizers again to give me this opportunity to take part in this workshop, inaugural program of this workshop. And I thank especially this Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, with which I am also maybe from the beginning, I don't know since when, I was associated with different programs, and this is my pleasure rather to be again with them for this program. So especially Dr. Deepan Das, and also I thank Professor Panda and Professor Mahapatra, and especially Sri Tasa, Honorable Member of Rajya Sabha. So all these people are there. And I got that opportunity again to take part a few days before when there was this webinar about Assam, Mizoram, that border dispute. But everything is related again to human rights, so to speak. But the most important part is that the very pertinent topic on which this workshop has been organized. This is a very pertinent work because especially, of course, everywhere there is the issue of human rights are there, but especially in the context of Northeast, it is very significant and very important because it is home to several ethnic groups, ethnic communities, religious organizations. So keeping in view of that, how we can have a harmonious coexistence. So that is the need of the hour. And after, from my own experience, especially spending for such a long time there in the Northeast, so I find that it should be discussed at length, and almost all people, they should have some sort of awareness about human rights. So I will try to first speak about the importance, the significance, then I will come to the education part, and then I will try to contextualize this Northeast area. See, each and every human being who is born to this earth must have a respectable existence. He must live in dignity. He must live with some sort of self-esteem. So this is the inalienable right of each and every individual. So having said that, when it comes to reality, we find every now and then, if you go through these newspaper reports, if you watch television news, you'll find that always there are issues about flagrant violation of human rights. So there's a very serious concern. Why it happens? How it happens? Is it very innocent? I'll not go to a very, you can say that very past history about this issue of human rights. See, after soon after this United Nations was established, there was a discussion because in the United Nations Charter itself also, in the second paragraph, it was mentioned about the significance of human rights and human worth that was there. And in view of that, in 1948, so this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it was passed on 10th December, it was passed. And subsequently also in the United Nations, because that was the beginning. Why I'm telling so, because most of the countries at the time, just newly emerging countries, and they were simply grappling with how to manage their internal affairs. So because of that, during the transitional period, there was large-scale violation of human rights. And in view of that, some of these powers, Western powers, especially Britain, United States, so these people generally, they thought that there has to be some provision for the respect of human rights throughout the world. And as an effort to that, so on 10th December 1948, when this Universal Declaration of Human Rights was passed, so it was expected that there will be there will be at least bigger awareness, larger awareness about this issue of human rights. Then again, in 1950s, especially in 1956, 54, there was this draft which was prepared in order to expand the interpretation of human rights, especially this basic human rights, what we mean by human rights, what it includes and excludes. Regarding that, so there were two covenants which were passed. In 1966, it was adopted, and that covenant for social and civil and political rights, and covenant for economic, social, and cultural rights. All these things were adopted in 1966. In 1976, they were enforced. So after that, again, it was found that in many countries, especially in third world countries, there were some violations of these human rights. Then again in 1993, there was a commission, United Nations Human Rights Commission, that was established. It was there as a commission, as a council. United Nations Human Rights Council, it was there, but subsequently it was transferred to United Nations Human Rights Commission. So this is the enforcing body which will try to look after for the protection of human rights throughout the world. And whenever there is any violation, they try to identify, bring it to the knowledge of the United Nations General Assembly, and they used to discuss the issues. So all these things which were adopted, especially in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we find that, so they found that there are 30 such basic human rights. And they had identified 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. They had actually identified these 30 basic human rights. And these basic human rights are the rights by which each and every individual will feel that I have every right to live in this world with dignity and with self-respect. But as Professor Mahapatra had pointed out, how there is large-scale violation of human rights in the world, and especially though it is said that all these things occurred in third world countries, but these Western powers, they were instrumental for the escalation of violation of human rights, that I should say. For example, like that in the Gulf, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, in all these countries, the big powers only they were involved in different ways for the violation of human rights. So in view of that, it's not that actually there are not legally speaking, we have enough protection for the safeguard of these human rights, but still there is violation. And who is to be blamed? Who is responsible for these violations? That needs to be identified. So these are actually some of the serious issues that needs to be discussed, needs to be properly interpreted and understood. Then only we can give justice to this issue of human rights. Coming to India, as all of us we know that we have the protection in the third part of our constitution, that fundamental rights are there as a part of this you can say that human rights protection. And we have very elaborate rights in our constitution. And apart from that, forget about these constitutional rights. Apart from that, there are many laws which have been enacted for the protection of women, for the protection of children, for the protection of minorities, for the protection of you can say that various marginalized cultural groups. All these things are there. we have so many, it will be very difficult even for a lawyer also, it will be difficult to remember how many rights are there and when to apply which law or which act for the enforcement of human rights. But in spite of that, there is large-scale violation of human rights in our country. In 1993, when this Human Rights Commission of India was established, it was found that perhaps this is some sort of overarching body, and it will try to give justice to this human rights protection, and especially these marginalized groups, especially this on the basis of caste, community, religion. So each and everyone will be protected by this agency, but there is no end to this human rights violation. So this human rights issue, it's not that, for example, just I was telling that point number 11 of this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it says that unless you are proved guilty, each and every human being must be treated as an innocent person. But unfortunately, in our country, our legal system says that first you are guilty. The law says that you are guilty unless you have to prove yourself innocent. The other way around. Supposing someone files a case against you, you are the guilty, you are the accused. So you have to prove that you are innocent. But if, as we know the legal system and how it operates, that we know, if you cannot successfully defend yourself, then even if you are innocent also, you may be proved guilty. And you will be the victim of the system. So this is what actually needs to be understood and interpreted properly. A person, supposing someone will go and file a case against me that he has taken the bribe, or supposing he has done some mischief, someone complains against me, for that, why shall I be penalized? I shall lose my reputation, I shall lose everything. So this type of issues that needs to be rethought or needs to be understood afresh. Then coming to this Northeast issue, of course, I'll try to confine myself because I was seeing that perhaps 10 minutes time was allotted for me. I don't know how much time I've spoken. I didn't look at the clock, but I'll try to keep myself short, because when you are the last speaker, naturally the burden for you is how to wind up quickly, and I'll try to do that. So coming to this Northeastern issue, because as I told also on several occasions, in my 35 years of stay in the Northeast, I have seen there are different types of violations in the context of Northeast, and also I'll try to think about the in general in India. There are three types of violators. One is state actors, another is non-state actors, and third one I'll say they are the shadow actors. They are the shadow actors. And our ideologically driven intellectuals, they always find fault with the violation of state system. State actors, yes, they violate, especially there are excesses of police, defense forces. There is no doubt about that, and especially with armed with special laws. So definitely they violate. But at the same time, there is also violation because Northeast region has seen large-scale violations also from non-state actors. The insurgency, underground forces, they have mutilated human rights no less than even the state actors. They have created a sense of terror. There was a time I know because I had seen in my own experience when I stayed, especially the last part before Mizoram was declared a state. So I had seen the insurgency, the last part of insurgency. I have also seen the insurgency that has taken place in Assam. I have seen also this insurgency that has taken place in Manipur. So even in Meghalaya also. So what I'm telling is that you think about a common human being, how he is hard pressed. He is equally compressed between the violations of human rights by state actors as well as non-state actors. An innocent, simple villager, if he doesn't give shelter to insurgents, he will be killed. If he gives shelter, then police force will come and hound him. So why you have given, that means you are having connivance with these non-state actors or these insurgent groups. So he is endangered by both non-state as well as the state actors. And I am more worried about the common people. So that's why on several occasions, even in different webinars, seminars, and in conferences also, I have thought like anything. So when people generally, they try to point out about one type of violation of human rights, either from the state or from the insurgents. But if you dispassionately think about the condition of a simple villager or a common man, where will he go? Who gives protection to them? Because in the fight between the state and non-state actors, he is the most vulnerable person. So keeping in view of that, we need to think about a system in which there has to be greater awareness. See, democracy and human rights, there is the umbilical cord between democracy and human rights. Unless there is proper environment of human rights, democracy cannot flourish. And the true democracy only can be possible when we have respect for human rights. And both the things are interrelated and interlinked with each other. And when we think about the education, especially education, human rights education, we need to create a culture of human rights in the society, a culture of human rights in the sense that from the very beginning, the children in the school, so when they start at least learning, at that time, they must study about human rights, the dignity, the respect for human beings, that has to be taught. And at the same time, there are many others also. See, when I speak about human rights, I speak both from negative as well as from positive point of view. Negatively speaking, yes, there should be protection of human beings from physical, mental, economic, or the psychological, as well as that social, economic, political, all sorts of protections has to be there. That is one part. But positively speaking, human rights empowers people. For our development, personality development, we need also human rights. Unless you have freedom, unless you have, you can say that, unless you have proper environment, you cannot develop your personality. But at the same time, these rights are also linked with responsibilities. So why I'm telling about the culture of human rights needs to be spread across the states, across the organizations. The culture of human rights will include, see, our rights and freedom, they are not a license. That has to be made very clear. People only, they try to assert their rights. But when they assert that is called actually selfish exposition of fundamental rights, as a human rights. Each and every right is again endowed with some sort of responsibilities. How not only I will enjoy my rights, but also I shall enjoy the rights of others. And I can only give justice to human rights when I will also respect the equal rights of others, which I enjoy. But unfortunately, people selfishly, they think about only their rights. That's why I used to say that it also entails responsibilities. Responsibilities not only as a good citizen. I'm not telling about the political narrow classification of human rights. Human rights actually as a human being. As a human being, what is my responsibilities? How I can think that not only I, but we live in a very peaceful, cordial environment in which we can develop our personality, we can promote our wishes, we can become successful human beings. So for that, human rights is necessary. But at the same time, of course, as Professor Panda was also telling, and as a part of this new education policy, we always want that these human rights must be studied not only from the school level, but also in their own mother tongues. Recently, just I had the television program in which I fought regarding when it was said that no, mother tongue, it's not always possible to have in that new education policy. It's not possible to. Yes, why not? A child will understand human rights better in his own language, vernacular language, or in his mother tongue than any other language. Yes, we are multilingual and we know several languages, more than one languages we know. But at the same time, we need to give also importance to our respective mother tongues so that we can learn better, we can understand the issues better. So keeping in view of that, in the school, and apart from that, I'm just telling about the school education, of course, from child, but at the same time, we can have the culture of human rights only when all the stakeholders, they are also properly educated about human rights, like our police personnel, about that defense forces, about our judiciary. Here I want to tell you, first, for simple violation of human rights, immediately we run to judiciary, because we know that in the present environment, it is only we look towards judiciary which can give us protection. But that's a very risky trend, very risky trend. Why I say risky trend? Because the judiciary only or merely interprets about human rights. But for the better protection, we have to think the social, cultural, political environment that we need to create, by which there will be a culture of human rights which will be understood by each and everyone. Our lawmakers, our civil society organizations, they also need to be trained. They need also proper education regarding this human rights education. And with that, if supposing each and everyone will understand positively about this the significance of human rights, then only we can create a better society. human rights is not only for the protection of my rights, but for a better society, for a better environment that we need. And because of that, it is our collective as well as individual responsibility how to spread that awareness about human rights. Whenever there is any violations, it's our responsibility is not to escalate further this violence. And I tell you, no, there cannot be any justification. I have some arguments also with some of the activists who try to who gave the justification that end justifies the means. So violence, supposing it will be the means for a greater or for a ideal society, that has to be justified. And I don't agree with that, and I fought and I argued with them. See, I have come to this world not to sacrifice my life for the sake of others. I need a dignified existence. I need a dignified life. I don't know. Yes, if I violate, I need to be punished. But for the someone's objective, for someone's goal, if I shall sacrifice my life, that is there is no justification for that. There is no argument for that. So any ideology which justifies physical or mental or socio-political or economic violence, that needs to be avoided, that needs to be condemned. And then only we can live in a proper, and especially this type of, of course, I wanted that thing, and rather I will say our present honorary director, Professor Panda, also to promote this type of workshops for different stakeholders regarding this human rights education, and especially in northeastern regions, that will have it will create a better atmosphere, and definitely it will influence for the enhancement of the protection of human rights and for the prevalence of a more you can say that human society. So with this I stop. Again, I thank that CRS, especially the Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, and I thank especially Dr. Das, that organizing secretary, so for giving me opportunity, and I look forward this type of programs in future also. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rakesh Satpathy, sir, for your speech. You have highlighted a lot of issues regarding human rights. I hope in our coming sessions, all these issues will be discussed in detail. So once again, thank you, sir. Now, I would like to request our special guest, Dr. Lilakanto Borthakur, sir, Principal of Morigaon College, to deliver his speech. Borthakur, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Das. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Okay. A very good morning to everyone. Honorable Chairperson of our Organizing Committee, Dr. Deepan Soikia, Honorable Inaugurator, Professor B. Panda, who is a Professor in Economics and Honorary Director, ICSSR, NERC Shillong, Honorable Chief Guest, Sri Kamakhya Prasad Tasa, Honorable Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, respected keynote speaker, Professor A.K. Mohapatra, Dean School of International Studies, JNU, New Delhi, guest of honor, Professor R.K. Satapathy, former Honorary Director, ICSSR, NERC Shillong, my principal friend, Dr. Kamal Gogoi of Moridhal College, Dhemaji, my respected scholars, participants, and my dear students. At the outset, I offer my sincere thanks to the organizing committee of this one-week interdisciplinary national workshop on human rights education, excellence in Northeast, for incorporating me. From the beginning, I have enjoyed this session, and it was really a wonderful session with a so rich deliberation of the dignitaries. The topic which is taken for the workshop is very important and relevant at present situation. It has so many dimensions, and I hope that this workshop would bring the table for discussion. Many more distinguished resource persons will take part in this workshop in the coming session, and I believe that it will be a milestone for all the participants in exploring themselves in this area. Once again, I sincerely offer my gratitude to the organizers, namely Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, Department of Political Science, Moridhar College, and Department of Political Science, Morigaon College. I am also grateful to the ICSSR NERC for sponsoring this week-long workshop. Actually, due to constraint of time, and I think that the scheduled time is already over, so I don't want to speak more. Still, I was very enlightened on the keynote speaker about his some opinion regarding the philosophy of Vivekananda and Rishi Aurobindo regarding their philosophy in respect to the human rights. Also, Satapathy has a really map. He has given a beautiful mapping with the human rights and the responsibility of the people. So I think that this week-long workshop will be very fruitful for every participant. And with these few words, I conclude my short speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ilakanda Bhattakur, sir, Honorable Principal of Morigaon College. You have enlightened us with your just inspiring words. Once again, thank you. We have also invited Dr. Kamal Gogoi, Honorable Principal of Moridhar College, Dhemaji, as a special guest, but due to his some busy schedule, he is unable to join the program. And by telephonic conversation, he is conveying his good wishes. We, on behalf of this organizing committee, also offering our sincere thanks and gratitude to Dr. Kamal Gogoi, sir. So now it's the time for offering vote of thanks. Now I'd like to request Dr. Zoya Srinath, a member of the organizing committee, as well as assistant professor of the Department of Political Science, Morigaon College, to offer vote of thanks. Dr. Zoya Sri.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to respected honorable guest, inaugurator of the national workshop, keynote speaker, guest of honor, honorable MP, member of parliament, invited guest, principal of Morigaon College and Moridhar College, member of the organizing committee, and esteemed participants. I mention here my sincere gratitude to the organizing committee for allowing me to deliver vote of thanks to this session of ICCSR NERC sponsored 1 week interdisciplinary national workshop on human rights, education issues, and challenges in Northeast India. I, on behalf of Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, Guwahati, in collaboration with Department of Political Science, Moridhar College, Dhemaji, and Department of Political Science, Morigaon College, spread my most sincere thanks to the Institute of ICCSR NERC Shillong for financially helping to organize this workshop. Thanks to the inaugurator, Professor Bhagirathi Panda sir, Professor in Economics and Honorary Director at ICSSR NER Shillong for enlightening us on the subject. Thanks to today's keynote speaker, Professor Ashwini Kumar Mohapatra sir, Dean School of International Studies, JNU, New Delhi, for your valuable speech and sparing valuable time from your busy schedule. Thanks to Honorable Member of Parliament, Kamakhya Prasad Tasa sir, for providing your viewpoints on this matter. Thanks to today's guest of honor, Professor Richard R.K. Satpathy sir, former Honorary Director, ICSSR NERC Shillong, for sparing valuable time from your busy schedule and enlighten us. I'd like to thank invited guests Dr. Kamal Gogoi sir, Principal of Moridhol College, Dhemaji, Assam. Dr. Lilakanto Borthakur sir, Principal Morigao College, Morigao, Assam. Thanks to the Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, Guwahati, ICSSR, NERC, of the Organizing Committee Chairperson, Dr. Deepan sir, Organizing Secretary, Dr. Deepan Das sir, Advisors of Organizing Committee, Dr. Prabodh Sharma sir, President, CSR, SR, Dr. Anil Hoikia sir, Retired Principal, Moran College, Dr. Deepak Pathak sir, Vice Principal, RG Borua College, Dr. Hemalata Sharma ma'am, Vice Principal, Morigao College, Dr. Gyanjyoti Sharma ma'am, Associate Professor, RG Borua College, Miss Hantisaya Borua ma'am, Associate Professor, ZDSG College, Josna Hazarika ma'am, Assistant Professor, DCB, Girls College, Coordinator of this national workshop, Dr. Jogesh Das sir, Assistant Professor, MDK Girls College, Joint Coordinator, Dr. Osut Kumar Das sir, Associate Professor, Morigao College, Assistant Coordinator, Dr. Gargi Pupon ma'am, Assistant Professor, Jagirut College, Dr. Manoj Kumar Das sir, Assistant Professor, GG Borua College, Joyanto Dotto sir, Assistant Professor,
RG Borua College.
RG Borua, sorry. RG Borua College, Joyanto Dotto sir, Assistant Professor, Moridhol College. Members of this national workshop, Orpita Das ma'am, Assistant Professor, Pragyotis College, and Dr. Pallavi Hazarika ma'am, Assistant Professor, Morigao College. At last, my heartful thanks to all the participants because of whom we made this national workshop possible. Now I declare inaugural session is over now, and after 15 minutes break, first technical session will start and link will be provided in WhatsApp group. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. Now the inaugural session is over. After 10 to 15 minutes break, we have first technical session, and Professor Adilul Yasin, retired professor of the Department of Political Science, Dibrugarh University, will be the resource person. So I hope to meet you all in the first technical session. Thank you. Thank you all.